me, like Philippians, is it 4, 6, and 7? Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, prayer and petition with thanksgiving. But I remember reading that, and it was a game changer for me, because through prayer and petition, why does God want us to keep talking about? He knows it all. You know what I mean? From a just human mindset, it's can I say it once? Don't you know? But then I thought, I have 2 kids now too, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I may know what they're dealing with. I may know what they want or need. Not always, but often I do. But I'd love to hear it from them. You know what I mean? I want them to come tell me what their struggles are. I want them to open up to me. I want to just tell me the good stuff too. I always want to hear about their day and why it was good or bad. So I don't know that that's how it works with God, but it feels like a part of it is He is our Father and He wants to hear from His children. That just makes sense to me.
Hello, this is Andrea from OurDayDream, back again with another awesome chat. This week we have Josh Smith. He is the lead singer from the band Ashes Remain, which recently had a song go gold on my own. So without further ado and great pleasure, here is Josh.
Hey, Andrea, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Super grateful to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So I always like to start out with what's your story? I know that I've spent the day listening to a lot of your songs, and it seems like you really get into depth with that spiritual realm, that spiritual battle. But anyway, what brought you to where you are today with Ashes Remain and the human being you are actually?
Yeah, well, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I was born and raised in Florida. The band is out of Maryland, kind of all around the Beltway around Baltimore. So I moved up here in 2002. I didn't have a lot of direction. I knew that God had told me I was going to make music. I lived in a very small town. When people think of Florida, they're like, "Oh, did you live in Orlando, Daytona?" No, my town was literally in the middle of nowhere. It would take me an hour and a half to get to either coast and all that kind of stuff. So where I lived at the time, there was no music scene. There were no venues. I mean, I led worship at a bunch of churches, and I had a little band that I had started, and we would kind of, just, I don't want to call it touring. We would just drive around church to church. But I knew that this was supposed to be a career. This was supposed to be my ministry and all that stuff. So I had worked at a camp in Maryland, 3 summers in a row. And that's where I met Ryan, my rhythm guitar player, the guy with the dreadlocks. And he and we played worship together every summer. Every summer I just kept getting this, I was like, this feels crazy to say. By the 3rd summer, I was like, listen, this is going to sound nuts. Cause he was in high school and I was 18, 19 years old, freshly out of high school. I was like, I really feel like I'm being called to make music specifically with you. And he was instantly yeah. He's like, me too. That makes sense. I'm like, okay. So that was huge. But being so young and having nothing up here other than that summer camp, we got together every day that summer and we literally prayed face to face. Okay, God, if this is what you want, if you want him and I to work together, show us how, make a way, either get me up here or then get him down there. So we did that every day all summer. I went home, there was really no open doors, and I kept praying that prayer, and I would call and check in on Ryan, every couple of days for probably a month or two. And I finally just got to a point where it wasn't disappointed, it was just kind of surrender. I was like, okay, maybe I misread it. Cool. I'll let this go. And literally my prayer was okay, God, I don't think this is what you're doing. So I'm going to let that be. And a day later, I got a call from a guy that was a pastor in a church up here at a church plant. He's like, hey, my name's Dave. I met these guys that worked with you at camp and we're looking for a worship leader. And I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. What do we do? Where do we go from here? Remember, I'm very young. I think I'm even 22 at the time. But he's like, well, we'll fly you up. You lead worship here one week, just you and your guitar. We'll have an interview. So we go through the whole process. And I'd already decided before I got on the plane that I'm going, right? Because I've been begging God for a way to put Ryan and I in the same place. So I can't say no. So we do the whole interview process, and I'll never forget, they sit me down at the end of it. They're like, well, the budget is not much. I think they say we have $12,000 a year to pay you. And I was like, okay, I guess I should have prayed a little more specifically, but it's still, I was like, we're just gonna see what happens. I mean, I can survive. And I did. That was 20 years ago. 2002, I moved up here. Ryan and I started getting together right away and writing music and playing little acoustic sets. We didn't have a band name, we didn't have anything. But within like 6 months, the band was formed. My drummer, Ben, went to that church, which is crazy. He's the same age as Ryan. So we hit it off right away. And then my lead guitar player, because I think it's kind of crazy. I was recruiting for that camp. I was on just like a college recruiting mission and trying to get counselors and staff and all that. And so I think it was a Campus Crusade or Campus Life Club, his worship band. I remember watching like him, like watching Rob, I'm like, this guitar player is unbelievable. And I could tell, I'm like, he's holding back because this is worship. He's trying to be very like reserved. I was like, I need to talk to this guy. So I did talk to him, but I only talked to him about the camp. I was like, hey, we're recruiting for this and blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I left, I'm like, I didn't get that guy's number. I'll never see that dude again. So like a couple weeks later, me and the guys went to Guitar Center randomly and I walked right into him. I was like, okay, this is crazy. So like, it's been these little things all along the way where God's put us together. And we're a unique band that so we had a bass player then in the very beginning named Ben Ogden, who's like a dear friend of mine, grew up in the same hometown in Florida, the next town over. So he was with us for about a year. And then he went home back to Florida to help his family with some things they were dealing with. And then Johnny stepped in, but like, we've been the same band for 20 years, which is kind of nuts.
Crazy. Yeah, that's awesome.
Like and we played a couple shows here and there with a fill-in, drummer or fill-in guitar player. And it feels wrong. Like, I don't know another way to say it. When I look around, it's not that guy. It's weird. It's really odd to be out of our element like that. So, I mean, that's the like how I got here to Maryland and how Ashes started. Yeah, I don't know if is that kind of what you're looking for? I hope that answers any questions.
Absolutely. But then that makes me think about too, because I mean, I feel like there's the Christians that might just like pray a prayer once and then let it go. But I don't know, it's like God put it on my heart a long time ago, like, you know what I mean, to keep praying it, and eventually it'll come to light. But that's kind of profound that as soon as you said, all right, that
I know.
I'm letting it go now, that the prayer actually was answered. But then it makes me think about too, with the little kids, like my son Jackson at 7, he prayed his first prayer for a turtle. And I was like praying the whole time, like, God, I am not getting him a turtle. Like, I need you to help me with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not doing it. And sure enough, it was only 5 days later, his dad, which lives in a different house, ended up walking up the road randomly, found a turtle, thought to himself, I'm going to put this turtle in a cage and then have it for Jackson for a pet.
That's awesome. I know which one of you to ask to pray for me now. I'll ask Jackson.
Right. I told him all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think for me, like Philippians, is it 4, 6, and 7? Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition with thanksgiving. But I remember reading that, and it was a game changer for me, because through prayer and petition, why does God like want us to keep talking about? He knows it all. You know what I mean? From a just human mindset, it's like, can I say it once? Like, don't you know? But then I thought, like, I have 2 kids now too, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I may know what they're dealing with. I may know what they want or need. Not always, but often I do. But I love to hear it from them. You know what I mean? I want them to come tell me what their struggles are. I want them to open up to me. I want to just tell me the good stuff too. You know, I always want to hear about their day and like why it was good or bad. So I don't know that that's how it works with God, but it feels like a part of it is He is our Father and He wants to hear from His children. That just makes sense to me.
Right. But it makes me think about, like with Jackson, maybe he just automatically let it go to God like you did. Like he prayed the same prayer.
Yeah, for sure. Kids are so beautifully simple in the best way. You know, I mean, there's a reason Jesus says we need to be like the little children. Like I remember accepting things about God when I was a kid that make no sense to an adult. You just look back and be like, no, I don't buy that. But like when you're a kid, it just sinks in. Like, yeah, of course he could do that.
Right. It's awesome. So you have the album What I've Become Come Gold recently?
So it's not the whole album. It's one song, a single. So On My Own is like the one that went gold. Yeah, that was pretty insane. Never saw that coming for sure.
Yeah. Can you tell me about that song?
About the song? Yeah. So we wrote it. It was me and my guitar player, Rob, lead player, with Seth Mosley, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a incredible writer, producer. He does so much stuff in Nashville. But we spent about 3 hours with Seth, and within like minutes, he's building the track. Like he's like, okay, we're throwing around ideas. He's like, oh, something like this. We're like, yeah. So he's just like a mad scientist, going crazy, keyboards and everything. And like the second I heard the music, the words just started pouring out of me. And so that song was written probably in about 30 to 45 minutes. And we spent the rest of our 3 hours just tracking the demo. But for me, like two things I'm sure of: we're built to need God, and we're built to need other people. I don't think we're meant to live like the hermit life. We don't all have to be like super extroverted, but I've lost count of the times in my life where God has used a human to help me through a hard time, or a human that I'm there to celebrate with. It's my wife, it's my kids, it's my parents. And I tend to like isolate myself or like shut down when I'm stressed out. So my mom does it. So I kind of get it from her. Like if bills are behind, if the world's on fire, instead of fixing problems, my natural tendency is to go lock the door in my room and just sit and watch TV and ignore it and let it all like burn. But God uses my wife, especially. She's the one that's like, no, we got to do this. Like we can't ignore this. And if I'm hurting, kind of similar, like I'll just like internalize everything, and there's a line in that song too, talking about when I stopped praying about, the band. There's a line there that says, I lay my weapons down, I'm ready for you now. Sometimes I feel like we're fighting God's remedies. You know what I mean? Like it's that old joke where the guy, the town's flooded and he's on the roof, and the guy comes by in a boat. He says, no, God's going to save me. Guy comes by in another boat, drowns and goes to heaven. And God said, well, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. Like I feel like God constantly tries to communicate to us and help us out of the funk we're in or the pain that we're dealing with, to walk through it with us. But we're fighting him, sometimes not even aware of it. I've done that many times in my life. I can't speak for anybody else, but I think it's fairly common that we're the problem in that situation.
Yeah.
So that song is special to me because it speaks to me, but it's not special because it went gold. Like that is overwhelmingly cool to me. It's special because I've lost count of the stories it shows, or like messages from fans that come up and like, suicidal. I mean, there was a girl one time at a show somewhere in Ohio. Doors aren't even open yet, and like the promoter comes back and gets me, he's like, hey, I want you to meet this young lady. I guess he knew her somehow. She just opens up and starts telling me like, she was going to take her own life, and this song like carried her through. And I know that's not me. I know that's not Ashes. I know it's God using that. But that's why I think it's so crazy that that's the song that kind of blew up, because it shows that like we all need people, we all need God, and that song, that's what it is. That's what it represents to me. So when I look at like an RIAA readout that says like 500,000 units, whatever, to me that's 500,000 chances for someone to understand they're not alone in the world. I think that's what's crazy about it. So
that is so good. I think about whenever you say about God uses people, I always think about Abraham, and them sitting in the house making dinner, and they look out the door and there's a man standing by the tree, and they walk over and they're like, hey, I'm gonna give you like all this food and all this stuff, here's all these gifts, later to find out that man was actually an angel. And so I think about that oftentimes, like, am I walking past an angel?
yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So but I was brought to, like, God brought me to like Ezekiel 35 this morning, and it really made me think about like all the times that I accept how I'm feeling. Like I accept that I'm feeling sick today. I accept the fact that I'm tired today. I accept the fact that maybe I'm depressed today. And like you, I like to, kind of close myself in and things like that. And so but yeah, I feel like that, like I've been brought to thinking about a lot lately, like how Satan will like try to stop your call by kind of like oppressing you. And so kind of that's what like I thought about with that song was like, that oppression. But yeah, do you go through that? On this walk with God, this oppression that kind of tries to keep you from succeeding?
Sure. Yeah. Trying to think of concrete examples, but I do, and I know I have. I also think maybe this is a weird take, but I think we attribute things to the enemy that are sometimes just us. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're so quick to say, like, the devil wrecked my car. Did he, or were you going 95 in the school zone? I mean, around the
Right.
corner, like, so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. With the band specifically to us, I guess one way I've seen it is with, we've had two different buses, and buses that like we built the insides ourselves, did all the work. So they're not like they didn't roll off a factory line. So they were always kind of project buses. And the first one it was given to us, and then we did all the work on it. So it was a not a full size school bus, not the smallest, it was somewhere in between. I think it was like a 23-foot school bus. And we had this 3-month tour planned out. So we're trying to get this thing done in time. So we're not really out driving this bus. We're just like building, going back to Lowe's and Home Depot. So we get all together. We literally leave to go to start this 3-month tour. We get on the highway and realize, oh, this thing only goes 47 miles an hour on the flat ground. So, and we did that for
That's
6 years. We had this bus that was so slow. It had no AC, no heat. The shocks didn't work at all. It was all these crazy things. But that wasn't really where I would say the oppression. That was just us not paying attention to what we're doing. But that
right.
bus for years and years would break down. And the first few times it would happen, I would get really anxious. I get really worked up, like, what's going to happen? How are we going to get there? And I ran out of time, like stories, like how many times God like just worked it out till they got to the point where the bus would break down. I was pretty calm. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it'll work out. I don't think we've ever missed a show from it. Well, the best I can think of is we were driving in the mountains of California one time, and we blew like a radiator hose. So it's just constantly overheating. We're going up a mountain, so we'll pull over, pour water, pull it down, pull over. It's just going on for hours. And we're calling ahead to the venue, and like we were supposed to be, I think, the opener of like 4 bands. And every like 30 minutes we call like, hey, yeah, we're still not there. Be, okay, well, you can go second. Okay, you can go third. Okay, now you're closing the night. So everybody was accommodating. But then we get there, and these guys just like swarm the bus, and they're popping the hood before we're even parked. I'm like, what is happening? There were like 10 diesel mechanics that went to this church where we were playing.
Wow.
And within minutes, like, okay, there's your problem. 8 a.m. at my shop. I'll have a new piece fabricated. We'll get you back on the road. That
That's so
stuff just
awesome.
happens so often that after a while, I was just like, is it depression? Maybe, but it's only affects us if we let it mentally and emotionally and
Right.
spiritually. Like, and it's kind of maybe a hippie mentality, but I kind of got to the place where I was like, if we do miss a show from something that's out of our hands, like, okay,
That's
like,
so
I
cool.
mean, we do everything we can. Our second bus was much nicer. We're on like a coach bus, like a Greyhound kind of style. It broke down one time. We're supposed to go on tour for a couple months, and I flew out and I did the first like 2 or 3 shows acoustic, and like jumped on someone else's bus and went town to town. And you just realize like you just roll with stuff like that, and you could look at it as, this isn't what it's supposed to be, but God's got a plan far greater than ours. We don't understand it. You do everything you can and just let the other stuff roll off.
I so love that.
Yeah,
I love
it
that.
helps me.
Yeah, because I was just kind of realizing like I was allowing these things to happen. Like I was allowing myself to like just feel like drained and stuff. Like there is ways that you could put on. Like I had seen that you had in the one interview like putting on your full armor of God.
Mm,
And it's like, with that chapter, and then you also saying that, I was like, there's ways that I could, fight against this depression, this like, I just want to sleep all day rather than, you
yeah,
know, yeah,
yeah. I think part of the like depression specifically and anxiety, those are things I have struggled with. And I think part of it in the Christian world and within the church, I guess I should say, is we feel like we're not allowed to acknowledge it or to face it,
yeah.
like to talk
I
about
felt
it
that a long
is
time.
to,
Yeah,
yeah. But like if you can finally just say, you know what, this is an issue. God's bigger than this, yes. But you don't get through it by ignoring it. You know what I mean? I can't. It only gets worse. Like it only gets compounded the longer I just try to ignore it. So that's something I'm starting to see in like church, in the Christian culture, is like counseling's becoming more normal. Like, whatever,
yeah,
therapy, like these things are becoming more accepted. And I think it's incredible. Like, we got to keep going that
absolutely.
direction. I actually had a pastor friend of mine who, about counseling, he said he's like, if things are going great, I still go at least twice a year for a mental health checkup. And I just never heard of that. And I'm like, that is brilliant. Like he's like, I want to go in tell my story, and they'll be like, oh, here's 3 things you didn't see that's going on right now with you. Man, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like, you know, when you think about the fact of worrying or stressing or things like that, like it's really hard before you kind of like realize the truth that, you know, you start condemning yourself like, oh, well, like now you're acting out of faith, you know, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
now you're in sin, and
Yeah,
then you start to condemning yourself. And yeah,
yeah,
I walked that for, you know, couple years trying to straighten that out inside myself. Like, you know,
yeah,
it's okay to have a bad day.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
I had a coworker come up to me one time. He's like, I'm really worried about you. Like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm allowed to have a bad day if I want to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always thought with like touring too, right? Like, there's a weird. It's not poor me. There's a weird pressure that comes with you could be on the road for 40 days playing every day or every other day. But when you go to that town, when you meet that promoter, when you meet that crowd, they only know today, you know?
Yeah,
So it's really something that was a weird pressure of like, I can't not just be down, but I got to be like up. Like, you know what I mean? I got to be
right.
the front man. I got to be the like, whatever. And so, you know, luckily I said, same guys for 20 years. So we have such a great relationship that when the show's over and we get on the bus, if we need to shut our curtains and go to our bunks and just like whatever, if we need to talk, like those guys are therapy, you know, oftentimes on
That's
the road for
awesome.
me. But there's that weird thing of like, oh man, if I'm just grumpy a little bit today,
Yeah,
you know, what are these people going to think of me? What do they think of our ministry? What do they think? But like, you just gotta let some of that stuff go too. Like, it's hard, but you just
yeah.
gotta let it
I
roll.
never really thought about it like that, you know, because I think about that a lot of times with the pastor. It's like you got to put, because they're going through spiritual battles too, just
Oh
the
yeah,
same as we all are. It's just they got to push that to the side all the time and come up and show up as their best. But I never really thought about that with like bands and stuff like that. It's like you gotta, you know, step into that and, you know,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And on the other side, like for people at the show, like I still go to shows. Like I try to think like what's going on in their life right now. Like one tour, I'll never name her name. Sweetheart of a human being, a girl in the industry in a band. That's as much as I'll say. But we noticed like over a couple of weeks, she was getting very short and snappy with everyone, and just like obvious. And we're all, man, I wonder what's going on. Turns out she was newly pregnant. And like
Yeah.
she's going through all of the hormones, but there was like a good week where the whole tour was like, "Geez, what's wrong with her?" You know what I mean? And like we knew better. We spent time with her. We knew she was okay. But yeah, so you don't know. I mean, you have no
No,
idea what's going on in that person's life.
absolutely not. No. But you're lucky she didn't quit. I quit a job
I
every single
know.
time I got pregnant.
Totally fair. I think it's more than fair.
Every time. I'd find all these reasons to hate the job, like for no reason,
Oh
like out
yeah,
of nowhere, and you don't even know why.
yeah. I don't think there has to be any rhyme or reason there. I think you're allowed to do whatever you want. That's the rule.
Right. So the song here for a reason. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's the story of the song, and then kind of the story behind what the song meant in our career at the time. So behind the song is sat down with a buddy and a songwriter. He's a buddy now since then, but he said, "You only get to write one song and say one thing to your fans the rest of your life. What is it?" I was like, "Gosh, like no pressure." So we sat down talking about just some of the stories. Like I've met so many people who self harm, so many young kids too. That really sticks with me. There's a lot. I've seen so many scars, like physical scars. They'll pull up their sleeve and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and just the overarching theme, especially with the younger side of our fans, there's just this sense of worthlessness, that they don't matter, that something's wrong with them, that they're always the problem. I mean, there's a lot of specific stories, but that's kind of generally the idea. And so I think what came out of my mouth was like, I just want them to know that they matter. And that kind of started that whole songwriting session. And it's another one of those, like, it was done pretty quickly. Um, but then, and then the story of what the song was for us at the time was we were on a record label and we hadn't put out anything since What I Become, which I think was 2010 or 2011. So it'd been like a few years. And finally, we would send them demos. We would send them. We were constantly writing and saying, "Hey, what about this? What about this?" And I don't know, I've said in the past, I think maybe we were just too rock and roll for them because the rest of their label's very like CCM and worship and very mellow. For whatever reason, they were just seemed like they were never ready to make a new album. And so finally, I just called them up and I said, "Listen, like, where are we at? Like, are we going to make a new album? Are you guys dropping us?" And they said, "Let's do a song. Let's do one song, and if it charts well, we'll make an album. If not, we'll let you guys go." Like, okay, fair enough. So that was the song, and it comes out and it charts in the top 20, which for us is like amazing because who are we? But for a major record label, it didn't really move the needle. So we got dropped by our label. And I went through this like weird, like not full depression, but I was starting to kind of spiral. I was like, oh gosh, like all this stuff was happening. That seems to all be going backwards. We have no label, we have no booking agent, like everything's just falling apart. Total pity party. And I get an email from a radio station. I think it was in St. Louis. I try to remember this. I should look it up. And it was one of those stories where it's like, hey, one of our listeners, this young girl, I think she was 12 at the time, had actual plans. Like she had a day picked out and how she was going to end her life. And this random song by a band she never heard of came on the radio, and it stopped her in her tracks. And she reached out to this radio station. And it was so insane to me. I remember I said, well, let's connect us. Like my wife and I will do like some kind of FaceTime, whatever. And we sat down, we kind of got her story. And I just remember then, like, it was like God saying to me, like, here you are worried about your record label and how high did this song chart and what's your music career doing. It's kind of like almost like he was saying, like, what if you only wrote this song for her? Like, what if that was it? Would you be satisfied? It was a really big like moment for me that kind of refocused me.
I love that.
That yeah, like I can't control the results. That's done. That's not mine. But the why behind doing it, that I have a say in. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. We just don't know. I think oftentimes the impacts that we're making just
Mhm.
in having a conversation, and it's really awesome that you had the opportunity to like see the
Yeah,
impacts that we're making. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So were you ever in a place where you felt like you didn't have a purpose? You said you were pretty young whenever you kind of knew that God had spoke that onto your life.
Yeah. I've been in that place and since Ashes even. We've been doing it for 20 years. So there's been a lot of those moments, like with that song, like nothing is working, beating your head against a wall. But I think when you start, or when I started, when I can speak for the five of us, like when we started, it was we're chasing a ministry, we're chasing a career, this is what we do. And we just never could cross that threshold. There were always restaurant jobs and substitute teaching jobs and handyman jobs. And so I remember at one point it's another one. God tends to like refocus me when I start focusing on my own non-problems that I think are problems. We were driving through Chicago, and a buddy who's in a non-Christian, much bigger band just reached out. Was like, "Hey, we're in Chicago. I think you guys are going to be near there. I'll get you tickets. Come by." This was cool. It's a fun night, and we go to the House of Blues, like balcony seats, the whole royal treatment and everything. And I just remember, like, I'd never seen his band. Like, we knew him; he's a great guy. And but the band, the show was like a little like shockingly like I don't know, just kind of I don't know what the right word is, inappropriate for their age group of
Right.
fans. You know what I mean? Just saying all the crazy stuff. Not him even, but it's just a little shocking. And I remember sitting on their $500,000 tour bus after the show, and just all the trappings of success and fame are there. Anything you could imagine is there. And I just remember having this moment of like praying, like God, like we devote our lives to you, we make our music for you, we do all this, and we're in this like bus that goes 47 miles an hour, no air, no heat. And I don't have a lot of like moments where I feel like God just spoke and I could almost hear it. This was one of those where God was like, "Oh, are those the things you want? Like, is that what you're looking for?" So yeah, and that came from a moment of like, what are we doing? Like we're out here just driving around. I don't even know if we're making an impact at this time. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like the record's
Yeah.
old now, so there's not a lot of opportunities. Um, it's such a music business is such an odd thing because you could have the biggest song in the world, but if you don't keep that going, maybe you're still not in a band a year later. It's just a weird way to live. That was definitely a moment of feeling like I don't know if it was with no purpose, but like, did I get my purpose wrong? Like, did I misinterpret it? You know what I mean? Should I be somewhere else doing something else? Um, so yeah, I've had plenty of those moments.
Yeah.
They're
And
not
a
always
lot of
bad
people,
either. Sorry,
yeah.
that's not always bad. Let's say like when I got married, up until then, like touring is a breeze. I don't care. Like we'll eat rice and beans or dollar menu and like live on the road. I love it. I still love it. When you get married and it's like, oh, there's someone to miss now. Like this is way different. Have a
Mhm.
kid, it gets even crazier. You have another kid, and all these things. You're literally sometimes it's a calculation of like, am I being a good husband? Am I being a good dad? Like, how often can I do this? How long can I stay away? So it's not always
Yeah,
bad to like question like your purpose, your calling. I think there's good reasons to question it too.
absolutely, to ground you.
Yeah.
For sure. I think about that. Like, I remember, I hate to bring up another artist on here, but Jordan St. Sierra, I
Yeah.
guess his daughter's like really like been dealing with a lot of health issues that she was born with, and like being away from, your kids like that, and they have all
Yeah.
those health issues and stuff. It's like, and then in the Christian community, it's hard to get people to go to the concerts,
It
and
can be. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
always
It can be.
I always think about that, whenever I go to the Christian concerts and like looking at the room and I'm like, people would love this. Like, where are they?
Yeah.
And it's really, I make it my point to try to get people in there, but I mean, it's difficult. And,
Yeah.
the time that people sacrifice to leave their family and stuff, people need to take account to that.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. He's actually coming to our church soon with Colton Dixon
Yeah.
and somebody else. Yeah. So I'll get to meet him. I'll tell him you said hi.
Thanks.
I don't know. His music, his song. I only really know the one song, but it's really good. The fires, right? That's him.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
good.
He
Yeah, I'm
talks
excited to
about
hear
his
him.
daughter a lot. It seems like I noticed they talked about her first at his concert, and I was just thinking to myself like, but then you'll see on his business profile and stuff. It'll be like, my daughter's sick again. Like, can you say a
Mhm.
prayer for her? And I'm just like,
Yeah,
like how hard that would be.
it would be hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to leave when they're healthy. I can't imagine. Like we did
Yeah.
Germany a few months ago, and it was just like 4 days, but it was just like every day I could FaceTime with my kids. It was so weird not being able to just hold them or like
Yeah. That's
face
so
to face
sweet.
with them. Yeah, I love them.
That's so sweet. Um, so a lot of I know some of your fans are kind of like, where's the Ashes Remain? Like, when are they going to go on tour?
Someday. No, we're working on
Someday
it.
I will.
We are formulating a plan, and a loose plan at that. We do have a booking agent now, which we haven't had for years, literally. So it's Faith Artist Agency. If anyone's looking to book us, I mean, I'm sure you probably know them. Brandy's awesome. The whole team seems to be awesome. So we're in that weird place of COVID happened, so we did nothing for like almost nothing for 3 years, honestly. A couple one-off shows. We haven't recorded in forever. And I can't explain any of this, and it's not a humble brag because I still don't know where it's going, but like our numbers kind of went crazy over the pandemic. Like for us, like the Spotify numbers, YouTube, all whatever that means, I attribute it to like everyone was home and bored for a really long time. Um, but yeah, it's just there all of a sudden there was like this new life to the band and the music specifically. So we talked with our label and basically we're like, hey, do you guys want to do something? Because if not, you can let us go and we'll do it. We want to put music out. And they're like, no, absolutely. So we're writing like crazy. That's phase one for us.
That's awesome.
I Yeah, I'm excited. It's probably at least 10 to 15 songs that are, various forms of 85% written to 100%. So we're doing that and we're working on demos. We'll send those into the label. I don't want to say a date, but I would love to see a record out by the fall. I mean, that's kind of a little bit aggressive because we haven't really picked a producer or any of that stuff. We're actually talking about self-producing it, which will be kind of new for us, but it's not rocket science. And Ryan, the guitar player, the one I moved up here, new first, he is incredible. Like he's had all the studio gear for years and years now, and he records other bands. And we're just kind of talking about like we're all like older with kids. It's not like it used to be where we just run to Nashville for 3 weeks a month or whatever and camp out. So we really want to do it here. We did our last album in Maryland. with Mikey from Seven Time Down, the singer. He literally packed up all his mobile studio gear and drove from Kentucky to Maryland. And we did it super like fast. It was insane. Like we did 9 songs in 8 days. And we had already recorded one of them in Nashville before that was supposed to be the lead single. But that was fun. I like that kind of stuff where it's just like just stay up until 3 a.m. and you're back at it again at 9 or 10 in the morning. But this way with Ryan kind of at the controls, we can kind of pace it out a little bit more. We don't have to just go crazy for a week. We can actually go back and forth. So album is number one, as it should be. Music is what we're doing. So that should come before shows and all that stuff. But we are planning to tour. We did Germany last year. We're hoping to go back and do some European stuff in 2024. But we want to tour like smart. Like we don't want to just like do what we used to, where it's like, oh, you want us to come to Kansas for $5? We'll be there. Like we want to plan like compact, routed, like intentional tours where we can do like a Midwest run or we can do a West Coast run. We kind of put it all together. And really it's up to the fans. It has nothing to do with us, how much they actually, like you said, they want to show up to shows, if people want us there, if it all makes sense. We don't love, there's no job on earth we love more than this. So if it works, like that's great. Like we just want to keep moving.
I feel like there's a lot of people sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for that. Hey, we're
yeah well, it's coming. It is coming. It'll be a lot of like 3 and 4 days in a row on the weekends. Like, so me, like, I'm just one of the rest of us, but I'm an associate pastor at my church, that came about over the last few years. So that's not something that was going on in my life forever, but it's a great church. It's great people. It's where I need to be right now. So I can't just say, let's go do a 2-month tour like that. That's kind of off the table for the moment. Who knows in the future, like there could be more flexibility, but a week or 2 at a time, very intentional dates, like that stuff is kind of where we're at now. So keep building it.
One last song can we talk about? Do you have time?
Anything? Yeah, sure.
Rise. Can you tell me about Rise? I love that song. I love it.
Yeah, you'll hear some of this on the new album too. I'm not always laser focused of like, here is a story I heard in the news and this is what the song is about. But if you go through the lyrics, it's just kind of I call them like the state of the world songs and all of the frustration. Of course, it was before COVID even. So but it's broken souls on the city streets, fall apart as the city sleeps, fading hearts of a generation, tired eyes of a desperate nation. I feel like the world, if you turn on the news, you look through any social media, there's a constant cloud over everything. Everything is awful. People are awful. Like the world is the worst. And it only got worse through COVID, and I'm sure it'll keep feeling worse as we go on. But like we are left with a choice. Like we accept it and we just live in it, or we do something different, even if it's just for our family or ourself. If you're single and or whatever, like you can decide what kind of mindset you want to have. I mean, you really can. Yeah, so just the idea of I will rise. It's not saying, oh, I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. It's just saying, look, I'm not going to live in this funk anymore because it's just poison, And for us, obviously with our faith, like the bridge says, I think it's build me up and burn me down, take me over. You're everything that I need now. Like, it's really, that's my connection to Jesus in that song is like, he can rebuild me. He can work out all this junk in my head. And I can turn off the TV for a while and just like pick up my Bible, like pray, like talk to Jesus, listen to Jesus, and be something different than what the world wants me to be. Than what honestly sometimes I want to be. I can get lost in all that nonsense too. And it's not that it's all fake. I mean, there's important things, and we need to be aware of what's going on. But it's back to that, like, do I let it affect my mindset all day long? There's a song, I don't know, who knows what songs will make the new album, but we're working on one now. I'm working on one that's it's literally called Thoughts and Prayers, because I'm so tired of the thoughts and prayers on Facebook and Instagram and everything. Like not because it's bad. Thoughts and prayers are great, but I've noticed it's so easy to say that when you could take action. If you can't take action, yes, pray. If you can take action and pray. It's like if someone came to me right now and said, I need $5, I said, I'll pray for you. Like I could probably spare $5. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird analogy. But it's just another way of like, how do we get out of that mindset of like everything's awful, we accept it, we don't do anything about it. We just kind of watch the world burn, and I don't think that's good for anybody.
Right. I think about other cultures, like they think about tithing as like if you tithe food into somebody else, like you're gonna get food back, a
Sure.
hundredfold. If you tithe a smile, you're gonna get, smiles.
Yeah.
I like it's like tithing so much bigger than just giving to the church. It's like what you give back that you would receive, and it's like making that intentional, like I'm doing this for God, and
Yeah. Yeah.
then yeah, so it's like other cultures are really big on, tithing and a bigger aspect than just like going to church and giving out a tithe. It's like, what are you tithing into the kingdom on a daily basis?
For sure. And why are you doing it? I think is important. Like
Mhm.
are you doing it because if I do this, maybe God will multiply it? Are you
Yeah,
doing it out of obedience? This just happened to me a couple weeks ago, so I'm still my mind's kind of
that's so
broken by
good.
this. My son is 9 years old. So we left church. We're going to shop, I think grocery shopping, whatever. My wife and daughter are in the car in front of us, and we're behind them. We're at a red light waiting to turn in. And this homeless gentleman walks by me this way. And my son at 9 years old lights up and goes, Dad, we got to help him. I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, I'm looking. I'm like, I don't have any cash. I find $1. He gets up to my wife's car and I see her hand out whatever cash she had. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. She saw him. So as he's coming back, I roll my window down. I hand this man $1. And my 9-year-old son, I hear his window start going down. So what is he doing? He had this bag of potato chips he had eaten half of, and he holds it out the window to the guy. And the dude was shook. He was like, "Are
Oh,
you sure, buddy?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I want you to have it." And the guy's like
oh,
tearing up. I'm tearing up because I'm like, in his 9-year-old brain, all he knows is that man needs help. And
yeah,
this would be an insult to someone who wasn't homeless. Here, take half my chips. But so we're
yeah,
just like so pure. And it's so crazy. So like connecting to tithing, it's like, why do we give? Why do we do anything? No one had to teach my son that like that guy looks like he needs help. I have food.
yeah.
I have food at home too. And when we're leaving, he's like, yeah, he's like, I can eat later. We're going to a grocery store. And I'm like,
I love that.
that's it, bud. Like you get it. Incredible.
Yeah, I love that. Um, so where can we find you then?
Yeah. So our website was down forever. It's back, but it is not up to date in any way. But as things get updated, you can go to ashersremain.com. We've got that squared away. Instagram, Facebook. So Instagram is let's see, Facebook is or YouTube is Ashes Remain videos. I've been trying to be more active on there. I've been popping up doing random live streams. Sometimes I sing, most of the time I just talk. And then Facebook is Ashes Remain. Might be Ashes Remain Band. This is how bad I am at social media. I don't even know how to find their band, but we're on all of them. Twitter, whatever. We're not on like Twitch, mostly because I don't understand it because I'm 43 now. So I think
Yeah,
I'm allowed to not understand it.
yeah. I really encourage people to like dig into like you speaking. I know even just like talking to you here and on YouTube, the different interviews that you've had and stuff, you're so encouraging and um yeah, so just
Well,
to
thank
like
you. You're
yeah.
encouraging right now.
Thank you. But yeah, just to like not only listen to your music, but also dig into like, the different things that you're talking about on YouTube and these different interviews and stuff like that. You bless me and I thank you for your kingdom work. Uh, what you're producing inside of people through their pain and yeah.
Well, thank you. It was an honor to be here. So,
All right. Prayers for your next upcoming tour that everybody's excited to see and your safety and your family and all that. So
thank you.
you're welcome. Blessings.
Blessings. Have a good one.
If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe because we have an awesome guest coming up every week and I don't want you to miss out. God bless. I hope you have an awesome week. Don't forget, OurDayDream does not have merch. So if you want to check it out, link is in the description. Hope you have a good week. I'll see you next time. Bye.